Welcome to This Week in Black Media for May 1st, 2019. And as you can see, our first featured video from Black Media this week comes from the Michi X YouTube channel, and it's titled, Let's Get Something Straight About ADOS versus RBG. The RBG is a reference to the red, the black, and the green of the Pan-Africanist movement. And what Michi goes into in this video is the fact that a person can be both Pan-Africanist and ADOS at the same time, that a distinction does not need to be made between the two, and that one doesn't bar one from being a part of the other. And vice versa. We've mentioned this ourselves in last week's video, or the week before that, making it clear that a person can be both. And I think that this video is a good way to start this week's commentary out on, just to remind us of that. And I think the awareness of that will grow, because the arguments to the contrary are baseless. They can't be supported under the scrutiny of contrary evidence that is abundant. So I reiterate that you can be both. Proof of that is right here. So the other thing that is mentioned in this video is that she makes reference to their upcoming, her and David Banner and others have an upcoming Black Agenda tour. And she points out that it should not be looked at as a competition to Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore's ADOS movement, but rather as a facet of a larger growing expansion of African consciousness and communal awareness. And I agree. I support that. I think anyone that's being divisive, I think there's enough momentum with the movement and the collectivity that's taking place that divisiveness is just going to be seen for what it is, and it's not going to be able to hold up to the collective that's building. That's my estimation of it, and I think, well, obviously time will tell, but I think that's what the case is. Divisiveness will be seen for what it is. Let's see, and so will cohesion, and she clearly points that out in the unique and frank way that she does. And if you're interested, check that video out. Check her channel out. It's just opened back up, and it is growing. That brings us, speaking of this cohesiveness, that brings us to this, some of the predictions I made about Black Media when this channel started in January. And some might consider that common sense. But when we look at the history of my writing about this subject, you can see it was done over a decade ago. And I'm surprised to see it taking place in the manner that it is. But there are some other coincidences that are strange within themselves that I'll go into at a later date. But what I want to point out today is that across Black Media, presidential candidate Joe Biden got tore up this week, tore up across the board. And we can see that even in all the channels that we promote on the Ancestral Productions channel. So we can see, we take a look at Antonio Moore's video describing why Joe Biden shouldn't get the black vote. And we see this screenshot. We see this screenshot up here from a video from Biden about the racist legislation that he supported that was right around the Clinton era of politics there, that was biased, and it was against black males, and it affected black males more than any other group. It was by design. And I've mentioned before about that Biden has a genuine presentation to him, and he does. I had never seen this video before, but I would equally say, yes, he is genuinely racist. And yeah, so you have to watch the video, and I do have a quick clip of it, and I'll point to which one you can look at for time constraints. It's only like 1:23 long, you can see that. So that brings us to this video over here, where the Black Authority went in on him too. Didn't pull any punches. The video's titled, you can see it, Biden, The Return of the Beast. This brings us down here to this video here, who I think this might be from Advise Show or Lisa Cabrera, but it's Joe Biden's. Joe Biden ain't it. His horrible record will come back to haunt him. It certainly looks like that on this page. This is another video from Advise Show, from Phil at Advise Show, that stating that Biden doesn't deserve any black vote. Here's another one. Professor Black Truth got at him. We see here this one. I recall this is from Dr. Boyce Watkins, stating why he can't vote for Biden. And Dr. Watkins doesn't often, most of his presentations are about black economic growth. You see, and he discusses the reparations also. But for him to comment on just flatly saying that Biden doesn't deserve the vote, it shows that he's stepped beyond his usual lane to make reference to that. My point here that I'm pointing out is this is across black media. Collectively, the same topic being talked about. And as I said before, some would say, well, that's common sense to think about that. And I say, no, you got to look at YouTube 10 years ago. You got to look at the different news channels that we had 10 years ago. We would see these kind of cohesive reports about popular rap items. We would see these cohesive reports about popular social media items, not popular political items. Not like this. This is something different. And I stated before that if you want to see the video that I'm discussing here, the racist video from Biden, we can just watch here. It's like 1 minute and 23 seconds long. The important part with this video is that you keep in mind that he's talking about legislation, that he's talking about black males. That's who's being isolated in the rhetoric that takes place here. That's who he's talking about. That's who the legislation affected, and he had no remorse about it whatsoever. And I reiterate, he does come off very sincere, and he's very sincerely racist here. So we have to look at the social ramifications of that mindset. And that brings us to a very close here today reference from a Willie D video that shows how a white teen comes in and sticks up for his black friend who's being abused by the police. And Willie D goes in and states how it was brave for the white teen to step in. And he also calls out those that would say that complained about the white teen stepping in, calling him a white savior. I find that ridiculous also. What he did was use his white privilege to help someone that was being mistreated, you see. And that's why you also see that I support Antifa, you see, because those are largely Europeans, and they check the racists. You see, and if you look at it, it is kind of their job to do. You see, obviously we need to do what we need to do too, but it's within their culture. It's their culture out of line. Look at it from a game perspective. If you got someone running Renegade, how long that last? Yeah, Antifa's checking. So, yeah, but what I point out here is another related video that Phil at Advice Show did, and what Phil does is he breaks down how white privilege is presented right in front of us in plain view. And it's so true. All you have to do is look at the video. You watch the way the officer has the black boy around his neck, snatched up, as Willie D had said in his video, the way that someone might scold a dog. And the white boy comes up, pushes the officer, and you can see the clear distinction in the officer's observation, making the distinction between the black male and the white boy that pushed him. The white boy was clearly one of his own, and therefore he was not within the realm of being treated the way the black child was. You see, it's sickening if you think about it, but if you think about where that kind of behavior and where that kind of mindset comes from, it comes from the politicians that support the legislation that allows them to treat our people that way. That brings us to go back deeper. Well, where's the politicians get this myth of their superiority from? Well, they get it from the slave trade, and they get it from the lies they've told themselves about the Bible, which brings us to this video here. Very important. Take a look at this video, because it shows how up to 20% of the slaves in the transatlantic slave trade were Muslims. This man here could write. You see, it's quite contrary to the story that we hear that it was nothing but savages that were brought here. We had mathematicians brought here. We had doctors that came here that would have technically fallen into that category. You know, if we're using modern definitions, we had skilled architects, metal workers, priests, all of that. They weren't just talentless, mindless animals. You see, so we need to re-narrate slavery also, because that helps to promote that kind of mindset, which is dying. It's literally dying. Their numbers are dying. The racist component of them are only a percentage, and they're literally dying. They're not reproducing themselves, which causes what? More racist rage. And that goes into Phil Advice Show, does another video here, talking about the Great Fall of Esau, and he talks about the white supremacy mythologist, the manifesto he wrote for his reason for shooting up the mosque, and he's upset about low birth rates, and he's upset about losing his place in society. He's feeling overwhelmed by the presence of people that don't look like themselves. You see, it's not the behavior of someone that knows they're superior. See, someone that knows they're superior, truly feels they're superior, they don't need to eradicate anyone. Is that self-explanatory in itself? That brings us to the shooter at the recent shooter at the synagogue, which is another manifestation of this. And then that obviously brings us to what is behind that. Well, we look at the low fertility rates. The white racist is increasingly finding themselves confronted with the myth of themselves, that they no longer have a captive audience that has to listen to them, that has to listen to their lies, that has to support their lies, that has to coddle their lies. You see, look at how irate they got when we had our protesters, our NFL protesters, doing something as simple as taking the passive, symbolic stance of taking a knee. See, they are incredibly fragile. And this world and the population statistics do not support that fragility. They are being crushed psychologically, and some of them are falling apart at the seams. All we need to do is look at these two videos to know that. So that brings us to our media producers. And this growth in consciousness that we're experiencing, and this is a video from Yvette Carnell talking about staying on code. And that's in reference to those that don't stay on code. And what we've seen here in this video this week is a coherent manifestation of a common identification of Joe Biden's incompetency to be entitled to the black vote because of his racism. And what I draw to is all the videos that you just saw that show that cohesion. I draw the distinction that we see between that and what Roland Martin did on his channel, where he does a video complimenting Biden and suckering Trump into taking the bait about his comments about Trump's racism. Completely oblivious, apparently completely oblivious to the racism that has been shown and discussed about Biden this week. See, so we have establishment black media, and we have the real black media. And if you're listening here, then you're with the real black media. Anyone that supports any of that racism can't possibly be with us. It's very simple. Your actions show that. Roland Martin's got a large platform, but that's why we're going to do the math now. We're going to do the mathematical analysis that I talked about. So let's go to that. All right, so here we're going to take a look at all the subscribers from these individual channels here that we have on our featured channel section on Ancestral Productions. And I already did the math. And what we come at between all of them, and all of these channels are growing, but what we come to is 1,988,109 subscribers. And while I don't think that this one here did an anti-Biden presentation, we can nevertheless look at it that you have almost 2 million people subscribed. So let's add to that the people that aren't subscribed, and let's add to that the idea that with these larger platforms, there are smaller YouTube channels like this one here that are reiterating the same content. And as I've said before, then you have all the subscribers that or the watchers, the viewers that aren't subscribed. Not to mention the many European viewers, both that support the ADOS movement and also the racists. So added together, you have almost 2 million people just here of what's featured on this channel that would have come into contact with the same content that's been presented here this week. the same message being transmitted. Number one, that should scare the mess out of mainstream media, which I'm sure it does. I'm sure they're trying to figure out ways to centralize themselves to be the top players as we speak, and I don't see how they can do it. There's something different taking place here. Also, while I have a chance to mention it, you see over here Black Junction TV. Many of our present channels already have accounts over there. I would encourage them to do that. This is a social media platform, like a YouTube platform that supports black content. It doesn't censor. You can run what you want there, and it's built and created by a black man. And I think it's good to have that, to support it even as a backup account. So by all means, do that. Support black media and support those that house it. We need more of that, particularly as this thing grows. So here again, and then look over here at Tariq Nasheed. Tariq makes movies. You see, and we know the Black Authority makes movies too. You see, and if its content is relevant to the community like that, it's very promising. Like I said, I have a great sense of satisfaction looking at what is taking place now. That it's something that's never happened before, and I'm deeply, deeply moved by the reality that I saw it coming. And that's another story. But as I've said, we'll see how this happens. We'll see what kind of effect it has on Biden, and if it doesn't change the fact that the momentum is here to stay. That's how I see it. And we still have several months for it to grow before election time. And so, yeah. So on that note, keep all these things in mind. Until next week. And as always, continue to watch and support black media